Hello, friends, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Nicole Smith, and in today's video, I am going to share with you why you might want to avoid living in St. Augustine, Florida. So stick around if you want to hear the 5 pros and the 5 cons of St. Augustine, Florida. Thanks so much for sticking around, friends. Now, Jacksonville and St. Augustine are about 41 miles apart, and St. Augustine is a little further south on the Atlantic coastline, A1A, and you can also get there from I-95 North. So in today's video, I want to share with you 5 cons, 5 pros. Let's start with the con. Now, I believe that the biggest con of living in St. Augustine, Florida is the flooding. Because it is the oldest city on record in the entire country, the infrastructure is quite old, and the sewer system just cannot withstand some of the rains that we get here. And we do get, hurricanes and some damages here, but what really happens is the surge from the ocean going into the city, since it is right on the intercoastal and the ocean, Atlantic Ocean. And sometimes you will see in the really old parts of the city where the streets are completely flooded. Back in 2022, Hurricane Nicole, not named after me, but I guess named after me since it's my name, but not a hurricane. Totally not a hurricane. I remember the streets were flooded. There were residents in their kayaks. It was a sight to see. That's happened in downtown Jacksonville too. So it's not only a St. Augustine problem. It has happened in parts of the older city in Jacksonville as well. But that is something you definitely need to be aware of if you're going to make a choice to live in the historical part of St. Augustine. But St. Augustine overall is about 10.4 square miles in its size. So there are parts of St. Augustine that are not historical at all. In fact, there's a surge of new construction going on. And in those parts of the county and the city, they are not having problems with the flooding, and they're not in floodplains. So you could save some money when it comes to flood insurance if you're living in one of those communities. Number 2, we get inundated with tourists because we are the most historic city in all of the United States. We have a lot of activities to do, and tourists are drawn to different things like the fort and St. George Street and the Lightner Museum. There's a lot of rich culture there and a lot of rich history. And if you've ever been to St. Augustine, then you know that they have the Ripley's. Believe it or not, there are a great presence of art museums and artists in St. Augustine. And it is becoming quite the foodie city as well. You're going to have some really unique restaurants there that you're not going to experience anywhere else because they're just privately owned and they're not chains. Yes, they do have chain restaurants, but I'm saying if you opt in to go to the private owned restaurants, and I will highlight a few. So when the I would say the main streets in A1A gets congested with tourists, it could take you hours to get from one side of town to the other, and that can be problematic. So you really have to consider where you're living and where you are working and where your driving route is to get to and from, because that could really add to your time of travel. And the fact of the matter is, we love tourists. You just have to adjust yourself to tourist season. And because we're in a mild climate, we can have tourists all year round. And in fact, around Christmas time, they have a trolley that you can ride. Well, they have it all year, but you can get on the trolley and see the Nights of Light, because the town gets together collectively and will put up Christmas lights on a numerous amounts of buildings and parks, and the Flagler University and the museum, all different buildings will light up at Christmas, and you'll take a tour all through the town, and it's really nice because they're playing Christmas music, and it's a great time. I've done it myself, and I really, really enjoy that. So, even when you're living here, you can feel like a tourist, because there's a lot of things I've never actually participated in St. Augustine that I still have to do, and it's on my bucket list. So I'm going to be like a resident tourist also. And the number 3 thing, which I sort of already mentioned, was the traffic. So when you have a large amount of tourists, traffic tends to get congested. And when the streets are narrow and old, yes, they've updated some of the streets, but primarily they're just your normal 2-lane roads. You can get congested, and then you're going to have issues with parking. Now, you could drive around town and find these little parking spots with, some of the street parking, but a lot of it's permitted, and you're not going to really get too lucky. I suggest going to the parking garage and walk the blocks. It's worth it just to get in, get your spot, and walk around, because you want to walk through St. Augustine anyway. They have areas that are all closed off to traffic, so it's very easy to walk around and experience the shops, the restaurants, and any of the tourist attractions like the Wax Museum. The oldest house is there. There's one really great popcorn store that I love to go to, and there's all kinds of great things. So the number 4 con of St. Augustine, Florida, is the limited amount of employment. So there are not a huge amount of companies that are employing people there. I would imagine the tourists, the restaurants, and of that nature. But the number 1 employer at this point in time is Flagler Hospital. So if you're in the medical field, you may have great options to work in that system, because they are the number 1 employer at this point in time in St. Augustine, Florida. And so when you're limited to your careers, you're more up to maybe having to create your own business, and then you can create your own business, and that would be an option instead of having to travel for work. So that is something a lot of people are doing, even working from home. So maybe that's not going to be a con for you if you're working from home. And the number 5 con of St. Augustine, Florida, is the cost of living. So compared to Jacksonville, the median homes in St. Augustine are $539,000. So the Duval median sale price is $346,000, that being 196 square foot. And in St. John's, pricing median sale price is $539,000 with $248 per square foot. So you can see that is quite a big difference. So with that being said, you're going to be in the St. Johns County, and you are going to get the number 1 school system in all of Florida. So that is why the demand is much greater, therefore the pricing is much higher. And that can be a con, because we all have budgets and we all have a level of what we can afford to pay, or where we feel comfortable paying for our living expenses. So that is the number 5 con of St. Augustine, Florida. Now, for me personally, the number 1 pro is the beaches. Yeah, they have 41 miles of beaches in St. Augustine, and they are beautiful, 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 beautiful beaches. The Atlantic Ocean in this part of Northeast Florida, very beautiful. The sand is very nice, and we have lots of it. So that's the beauty of the coastline. It's not just a few little feet of sand where the beaches feel crowded. No, they're very deep. And you can drive on them if you go 4x4. And certain times of the year, there's no charge. And then at certain times of the year, you have to buy a little permit to be able to drive on the beach. If you have the right vehicle, you can drive on the beach and enjoy the miles and miles of beach. And there's so many beaches, from Anastasia Island, Butler Beach, Crescent Beach, St. Augustine Beach, just to name a few. Lots and lots of beaches, and that is such a wonderful, wonderful lifestyle if you love going to the beach. The number 2 pro is the rich history. So between the Spanish coming and invading and building and the historical Black community that's there, you can really learn a lot of history that's in St. Augustine. And I would ask you to just go and do some research on your own. St. Augustine is rich history, and you will find it quite interesting. Number 3, and we know we always talk about it, but it is the mild climate we have here. We do get cooled off, and yes, we're in Florida, so yes, it does get hot, but we do get a cool down, and that is very refreshing. So from October until May, that's our prime weather. That's when we are outside more. When May, June, July, and August, September, it's hot for a lot of people who live here. They will do most of their errands in the morning. They may go to the beach, they may not, but it might be for the tourists, so sometimes locals aren't there. It's just tourists. And the number 4 is all our cultural attractions. So you can go and do so many activities and festivals. And I love their outdoor theater. It's so intimate and it's so beautiful. And I'll post some pictures of some shots I took while we were at a concert there, and the sun was going down and it was pink sky. It was so pretty. But yeah, you can really enjoy a lot of nightlife there. Not the heavy core like New York style life. I just mean the simple nightlife with maybe a live band playing at a restaurant. And one of the nicest places we like to go is the St. Sebastian Winery. They do have a rooftop bar, and if it's good weather, they'll have a band out there, and you can get your wine and your sangria or whatever you like to drink, and just sit out and watch the sun go down and listen to the music. And if you like to dance like me, you'll be out on that dance floor dancing away. That's what I love to do anyway. Live music and dancing, that's my jam. What about you? What do you like to do? So the number 5 pro, St. Augustine, is proximity to a big city like Jacksonville. That to me is great because you're living in a smaller town, but when you want the high quality mall and even bigger theater, you're right there close to Jacksonville. You can get down there in about 20 to 30 minutes, depending on which part of town you're living in and which part of town you want to go. So it's not too far of a drive to get to the big city of Jacksonville, Florida. And speaking of big cities, you're probably about an hour and 45 minutes from Orlando. So you could easily fly out of Orlando if you don't want to fly out of Jacksonville. You just might have to pay a little more to park, but there are a lot of more direct international flights leaving out of Orlando. When you fly out of Jacksonville, you're only flying in the country. You have to go to, say, Atlanta, for example, to fly out to somewhere else, or you have to transfer your flight wherever. I've had to transfer flights sometimes twice, but it just depends on where you're going. So I do think that being close to Orlando is definitely a pro, especially if you have children, and then you can just get on the Highway 4 and go there and be back in an hour and 45. That's an easy drive, and you might not even have to spend the night, and you can save on a hotel. Entirely up to you and your lifestyle, but it's a pretty cool option to have, being closer to Orlando. So that's my top 5 cons and my top 5 pros. What do you think? You think St. Augustine would be for you, or maybe not? And if it's not, maybe you could check out this other video, because I've toured many communities in and around Jacksonville that might be a better fit for you. And maybe, just maybe, if you like this video, you could give me a thumbs up, you could subscribe, leave me a comment. Make sure, if you're considering making the move to Northeast Florida, that you reach out to me. I would love to guide you through the process and be your go-to agent here. I'm Nicole Smith. I'm a realtor here in Metro Jacksonville, and I service everyone from Fernandina Beach down to the Palm Coast, and I would love to help you start living the dream in Jacksonville, Florida, like me. Thanks for watching, friends, and until next time, stay safe.